We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
Welcome into Tailgate. Austin Gayle here in Mike Renner in Indianapolis. I don't know what the hell that was. It's Austin Gayle and Mike Renner in Indianapolis. We're here at, it was a long night, dude. The Catch and Reel Buzz is pretty loaded here. Yeah. I'm excited for the Catch and Reel Buzz. Today on the show, we have Jon Ledyard, Jon Ledyard of Pewter Report, Dane Brugler of The Athletic in person for the first time, Reid from ESPN.
Force,
dude, it was a freaking monster crew here. We talked pretty much every position group in the draft with all these guys. The episode is loaded. Before we get into it, want to do a little Catch and Early Buzz segment. Can I start? Yeah. One of the more embarrassing stories from last night. So we are at Prime, which is the go-to bar in Indianapolis, really for anyone coming down here. It's a really nice bar. And the biggest reason for it, which I'm finding out now, this bar being so sweet is it literally does not close. Like, I think it's like illegal. Like, I'm scared to even bring it up. I'm scared to bring it up how like illegal this bar feels. We're there till about 2, 3. You start to see some people leaving, right? And you're like, okay, maybe this is the time to go. Maybe it is bar closed. Lights aren't turning on though.
It's not,
then I'm there till 4. 4:30. We end up walking out of Prime at 5 a.m. and I'm sitting there like, Mike, we need to get the hell out of here. We need to get the hell out of Prime because this is a legitimate disaster. And I'm on my way out. Or we're about ready to leave, and the waitress comes up to me, and I'm like thinking they're gonna ask us to leave. She's like, "Do you want a beer?" It's like, "No, ma'am. It's 4:30 in the morning. I need a water and like a nap." But we end up leaving at like 5 a.m. And when I get back, you don't remember this.
I don't.
I go to there's no food open. Shake Shack used to be 24 hours. It's toast.
Steak Shake.
There's no Steak Shake. There's no food open, so I end up going to the JW Marriott concession thing.
Oh no.
So you can buy like concession items from the hotel, which are like movie theater price points. I ended up grabbing like 8 Hot Pockets, 4 frozen burritos, like Reese's Cups, Kit Kats, waters. And so the guy, I'm like, don't even tell me how much this is. This is gonna be a disaster. Like, I know it's gonna be rough. And it's me and a handful of the other PFF guys. He says $380 or something like that. It was $317 for like 9 items.
Stop.
No, he says $317 with a straight face. This guy had a straight face.
Yeah.
$317. I was like, are you serious? He's like, yeah. And he already swiped my card because I told him don't tell me. And then I was like, I need to get some of this back. And he's like, there's no return policy. I'm down horrendous, dude. I'm already kind of drunk. I'm really tired. I just ordered 7 really bad Hot Pockets. There's no microwave in the hotel room. I'm microwaving the Hot Pockets like so down horrendous, like shaking, microwaving each individual Hot Pocket, checking if they're warm, going back. Meanwhile, this guy's just looking at me in the face, just like, yeah, it's $317. I finish cooking all the Hot Pockets with the boys. I'm about ready to go back up to the room, ready to like put a bullet in my head. And he's like, hey, it was actually only $100. Literally just like, it was only $100. And he was like, hey, don't worry about it, only $100, which, I mean, at a certain point, that's okay. I brought like 19 things, but I was stressing, sweating, heating up Hot Pockets at 6 a.m. this morning. Went to sleep, woke up at 8 a.m., and we've had ourselves a day.
Now we're here. I actually woke up at like noon. It was great. But I had a story from last night. Mine's a lot more embarrassing. Matt LaFleur's at Prime. And I'm like, I got to talk to him. I mean, I packed shareholder.
I told you. I remember telling you don't do it.
And I'm hyping it up as if it's like the first time I've ever talked to a girl.
No, it was.
It's like in my head. It's like, I'm not
it wasn't the right energy for you to talk to him.
I know, it was bad. It was bad. And I go up and had the most awkward interaction that I've had in like years, in probably a decade. Since probably the first time I talked to a girl. It was like, hey, I'm
You came back really disappointed.
And then I left and I was like, that could not have gone worse. I think he hates me. I think Matt LaFleur hates me.
So here's the actual take. I don't think he hates you.
He just has
no opinion of you.
He doesn't even know who I am.
Yeah.
Doesn't know anything
and like he's
about
praying
me.
he never sees you again.
Yeah. So hopefully I redeem myself in some way, shape, or form. But
I think that was worse than the Hot Pocket story.
It was way worse, dude.
The problem too is I only ate like 1.5 of the 7 Hot Pockets I bought. Because like these are not even that good. I could barely use the fucking microwave down in the lobby. But Indianapolis continues to treat us well. Yeah. On to the draft coverage. Let's talk to Jon Ledyard. Then we have Dane Brugler and then Jordan Reid. Now joining the Tailgate podcast is Jon Ledyard, longtime friend of the show. I think the last time we had you on this podcast was in Indy 2 years ago.
Wow,
honestly.
has it been that long?
I think it has been
since
long.
You guys wised up enough to have me on.
Since then, you have changed roles. You're now the director of content at Pewter. Congratulations, excited for that.
Thank you.
Are we talking hand size the entire podcast?
Yeah.
Just the first part of the podcast?
Let's put our hands together here real quick and see who's got the biggest dogs.
Whoa.
Oh, AG's got.
Oh, what's up, big
I
dog?
think AG's got me.
How's that even possible?
These are some
Oh,
kind of.
Ledyard's got.
I don't know though.
Tell you got a big thumb going on.
You want to hang out later? Or what's the play? I think that was actually stunned me. Honestly.
I think we all, though, have bigger hands than Kenny Pickett. We can at least put that.
I also feel like as we continue to progress in like hand size measurements, I think there's more. This is a serious take. There's more data to be had on like palm width versus like what percentage of it is fingers and what percentage of it is palms. I think that has a factor.
Does it matter?
I think it's a factor.
You want longer fingers.
If we are
right?
literally going to
Yeah.
make decisions on these guys based on half inches, why aren't we talking more about that?
Well,
I
do
think-
they
we're not
measure
making-
thumb to pinky?
Yeah,
right?
I know.
Yeah.
So you're crossing the palm. Is the palm
Right.
like I don't think I have.
Or
one.
should you? You're
I think
saying
I just
should
have a
you measure
girthy
from
palm is the thing.
The end of the finger. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying keep the same measurement, but in addition to like say this is 8.5 or whatever, I also want to know what percentage of it is palm and what percentage of it is finger. Because
I
I
really
think that
don't
matters.
know. Grip strength's probably, if you're going to actually do anything, how much is his grip strength is probably a better measurement of
That's
like
a
how
good
much
take.
you can hold on
That's a
to a
good take.
football than pure hand size. But so Kenny Pickett, 8.5 inch hands. I have 9 inch hands, I believe, and it's like a little difficult. Like you don't feel comfortable holding on to a football. At least I don't. Like I don't feel like I really have control over it like you do.
Right.
I don't know, like something smaller. So does that like? Do you think that's an actual thing, Kenny Pickett hand size being an issue? The smallest
Yes,
hand's very
I think it's an issue. Yeah, no question. Doesn't mean that he'll be trash.
Yeah.
Sometimes
Yes,
we tend to like
yes.
talk about these things as in, oh, his hands are small, so he must be garbage. But no, we're talking about a guy who's going to be a first round face of the franchise type of quarterback. If you're not taking all the data into account, you're screwing yourself over as a team. I mean, this data is available for a reason at this point in time.
Yeah.
Like you need to take it into account. You need to look at the history of quarterbacks with hand sizes sub 9 inches, sub even a little bit bigger than that. Some teams have that threshold. It needs to matter to you. And you can get as many anonymous scouts quoted on Twitter as you want saying it doesn't matter to me. It's going to matter to most decision makers in the NFL. GMs, they care about that. They factor all that in. You're drafting a quarterback? You kidding me? Like this isn't a wide. This is a quarterback.
Exactly.
It's not a linebacker. Like this is a big pick for whatever GM makes.
So you're drafting in Kenny Pickett, 8.5 inch hands. I think the only quarterback in the NFL that ever had that same hand size was Michael Vick. Michael Vick obviously was special for a lot of other reasons. But I think the other thing, so everyone's like, but he played at Pitt. He played at Pitt and he had good football.
Yeah.
The NFL ball is 1.25 inches
Right.
bigger. It is a bigger football. So you're literally like not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to like something a little bit larger, like a grapefruit. I don't know. But I think this is going to get overblown because people are always talking about hand size and how much does it matter. It does impact, and it's something that he has to overcome, which he has done with the 2 glove stuff.
Right.
Like he wears gloves to literally combat this issue,
Right.
and teams are going to measure that in. We were having a conversation with the NFL, like make him at the combine take the gloves off to throw here. Yeah. It's just, if they had told him to do that, I don't think he throws. Like he's only throwing in Indy if he's allowed to use the gloves.
Yeah, I agree. So where does Kenny Pickett then fall for you in this quarterback class?
Yeah, I've tended to think of him as a guy who's going to go lower than, with consensus had him earlier on, even a month ago maybe, as the top quarterback, probably going to be off the board, in the conversation at least. I don't think he's going to be the top quarterback off the board. I don't think he's going to be 1 or 2, to be honest with you. Maybe the third guy, he'll be in that conversation. I do think he could still go before the end of the first round. Maybe a team trades up and they want that extra year and the 5th-year option, or maybe a team like the Lions picking at the end of the first round says, okay, we didn't take somebody at 2, but we're going to take him later in the draft. That could be an option. So there's points for him to fall to and still be in the first round. Won't surprise me at all if he's in the second round.
I'd also hammer this point home too, though, in that he's not falling just because he just measured it in 8.5. Like people knew this was a concern, and we're measuring, factoring that into his stock. They knew he played with 2 gloves for a reason. The report out before was that they were 8.25 inch, would have been literally the smallest the NFL has ever seen. He comes in at 8.5. This is already being baked into his stock. It's not like he'll be billed as like this faller in a lot of content, but the teams knew this. Teams knew this going in, and people who are propping him up as quarterback 1 right now, I do think that that's not ultimately what's going to happen. It's going to be Malik Willis, in my opinion, that is the first quarterback off the board. Kenny Pickett, I still think comes off the board in the first 32, first 40 picks, but I still think this is going to be an issue, and he's wearing 2 gloves his entire career.
Yeah,
I agree.
Other measurements I wanted to get on. Trent Burks comes in with small hands too. Kenny Pickett steals the show. He comes in with 9 and 7 in his hands when everyone's
that's
talking
not
about
small.
It's
but
not
like,
small, but what people expected was
hyped
like
up.
an 11-inch mitt from Trent Burks, and he still has. I think he has 79-inch wing, which is huge for the wide receiver position. I think you had a tweet just before we started recording where like wingspan matters more for receivers and more for really all players than it does even height. And I think him coming in with that wingspan, even though the hands are smaller than what was previously reported, people are going to flock to that. People are going to flock to receivers who have this big catch radius.
Yeah, where does he fall for you on the wide receiver class?
Okay, so Burks is, I'm kind of most people have the wide receiver class like all tight and they don't know how to sort it out. For me, Burks is clearly the number one. I didn't have it very close. I mean, not that I think everybody else is bad or anything, but to me, he was clearly the top guy. Not that I don't have concerns with him. I do think his routes need to improve. Yeah. There may be some level of separation struggle for him on the full route tree, but he's so explosive at his size. I just can't see that being a major issue for him. I think he is going to be mostly an outside receiver. But the fact that he played mostly inside in college, clearly dominated there. Then what? He gets, I think you guys have 39 reps outside or something like that. Yeah. And he's winning almost all of them. He's indecisively too. So it showed me he's got
I was actually talking to Traylon Burks' agent last night. It's Traylon, not Traylon. He was adamant about that. It's Traylon Burks. I was talking to his agent last night. He represents a lot of the Arkansas guys, and he said, we talk a lot about why wasn't he playing on the outside in Arkansas? And I was like, honestly, they were so trying to get him the football. And Felipe Franks is actually down the field running the vertical route tree. You weren't getting your best player the ball because you couldn't hit the broadside of the barn, right? So many times he was saying, where people come away from a big catch from Traylon Burks and it's a spectacular catch, it's because it was a bad throw. Right. This guy's adjusting to a lot of those bad throws from Felipe Franks. I'm not trying to dog Felipe Franks, but trying to rationalize why he was playing in the slot, why he was getting a lot of scheme production, a lot of screens, and it's because how are you going to get your best player the ball the fastest? It's doing that kind of role that he had at Arkansas.
So the thing with Traylon Burks that I keep going back to or trying to think of is a comp for him in the NFL. Stylistically, who do you think he most will be like once he gets to the league? Because that's been difficult for me to kind of think of.
Right, because people say DK Metcalf, but I think DK Metcalf was even more explosive.
He's not that level of explosive.
I don't think he's
I don't know if we'll see another DK Metcalf.
Right, he was a rare freak. Now, Burks isn't bad. I mean, the A.J. Brown comparison in some ways does make sense, guys who played a lot inside, but clearly had the skill set to go outside. So I think that comparison makes sense. Comparisons are rarely one-to-one. I don't see the Deebo Samuel thing as much as other people do necessarily. I think a name pops up and has a big season, we all of a sudden want to compare every thick wideouts in the same battle. And look at the way Deebo Samuel's used. The guy's got the most unique contact balance in the NFL. Acting like Traylon Burks is that guy is not a thing in my opinion, but there's some degree to which Traylon Burks, I think, can be even better in the NFL than he was in college. And he mentioned blocking yesterday, something he prides himself in. I don't particularly think he's a great blocker on tape. I mean, a lot of that's just desire and technique, and that can get better and will get better in the NFL, I think, so that's important.
Who is wide receiver 2 then for you after Traylon Burks?
Right now it's Jameson Williams. Right now it's Jameson Williams. I don't think he's a complete receiver yet. I don't really factor in the injury into my evaluation because I'm not a doctor. He could be ready week 1. I have no clue. So I just say, I'm just okay, I think Jameson Williams has this trump card and his speed that can just give you something to hang your hat on, even if the rest of his game isn't fully developed. Plus, he's pretty good after the catch too, and so there's something there to be real excited about with him. But he has to fit into the team the right way. Same for a guy like Garrett Wilson, who I like as well. Where do they fit into the team? How do they fit into the team? Williams might not fit into as many situations that make sense, but there's some situations like New Orleans, for example, where if Michael Thomas is back and he's doing what he does in the short to intermediate and dominating in the slot, having a guy like Jameson Williams on the outside would bring back the great days of Ted Ginn playing in that offense. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
It could be things like that the fit is perfect with him more so than a Garrett Wilson.
Jameson Williams came in with 6'1", 179. Some people saying, oh my gosh, super light for a receiver. But obviously tears his ACL. He plays the game more at 190, 195. Don't overreact to that weight. However, we haven't talked a lot about the Ohio State guys. They also weighed in today. Garrett Wilson, 5'11", 6'8". So maybe they call him 6 foot, 183, but with 32-inch arms, which I think is huge. 76.5-inch wing for Garrett Wilson today. I think I'm not overly concerned with either of the weights from the Ohio State guys. Garrett Wilson, 6 foot, 183. Chris Olave, 6 foot, 187, because they are clearing the 31-inch mark at arm and over 72 on wing as well.
Yeah, to go back to the Jameson Williams weight thing, when a guy tears an ACL, you lose a lot of muscle in your legs, quickly, and it comes back. Once you start to use your legs again, but because you can't physically work out, so not to worry about, in my opinion, him coming at 179. But we were talking before the show here that you said this is not a good class. You said comparatively this is a weak year just in terms of talent. Are there any positions though where you're okay, there actually could be value there because those are strong positions in this class?
Yeah, I think that I was kind of joking around about that, but there is some reality. The quarterback class is clearly down. There's some areas of the class that leave a lot to be desired in terms of especially high end talent. I think the depth is fine, but last year. Look at last year's class. I mean, the
it's
top
absurd.
15 or whatever was just unbelievable.
Micah Parsons felt like 10.
Yeah, like
that's not going to happen in this year's class.
Yeah, and you have like Elijah Vera Tucker down the board. You have Rashawn
Slater goes 13. Like that guy's going first tackle this year.
It's a rare top of the class. This year, I only see a couple players maybe even in that same vein. And I think that brings the whole class down as a whole. But depth-wise, still a lot of good. Like you can get a lot of good number two receivers in this class.
Yeah.
The problem is teams will draft them as ones, put them in situations as ones, and then we don't really find out. It's not really totally fair. So I like the receiver class. I really like the edge defender class. I actually think there's a lot of quality starters in the edge defender class. Defensive tackle wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It's not splashy.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as I thought it was when it started. And some of the weigh-ins will matter, like what Logan Hall weighs will really matter, what Cam Thomas weighs, because the tweener types have not done well in recently in the NFL.
Yeah.
So they need to be able to weigh and test for a certain position and fit a mold a little bit. But I like that group. And I think that the linebacker group has a lot of potential as well. The corners is, and again, more mid-round type of group, I think, more day two type of group. But in that day two area, there's some good depth. It's really just a lot of it in my mind. I don't see after the first couple tackles. I don't see the rest of those guys. It's a crapshoot. You take one of those developmental guys. It can go either
I
way.
love what you said about the wide receiver class because I feel very similarly. There's a lot of like high-end wide receiver twos, right? You can see like a high floor wide receiver two from the two Ohio State guys. Even like Drake London, who is a lot of people feel is the wide receiver one in this class and could be an alpha at the next level. I know you've compared him to Brandon Marshall. I still feel his floor is like this power slot that's a number two option in an offense and still has a lot of success. I want to talk more about edge though. Aiden Hutchinson obviously at the top of a lot of people's draft boards. Kayvon Thibodeau, this number two edge, but sliding for whatever reason that be. Talk about those two players and compare them as prospects.
Oh, man. This was way tougher than I thought it was going to be. Hutchinson, at the beginning of the year, I thought didn't look that great to me in terms of projecting. Now, he looked good, but not like this is the number one overall pick good to me.
Yeah.
Then toward the end of the year, if you notice, like watching his tape real detail, like he had a false step. He would pick up his front foot and put it right back down where it was, and that wasted some of his get off. And he's never going to be like as bendy as a Thibodeau, for example. So he needs all the explosiveness because if he's going to win on the outside as a pass rusher, which is the primary path you need to win on as a pass rusher to have success in the NFL, if you're going to win outside the tackle's hip, you have to be explosive for a guy like him especially.
Yeah.
You can't afford to waste any time getting off the ball. So later in the year, then when he eliminates, if you watch the Ohio State game, he eliminates the false step for the most part, most of his snaps. And the result is just complete terror. Like nobody could block him. It didn't matter who they put out there. They moved guys around, it didn't matter. Like nobody could block him. And as soon as they started oversetting, because they realized they couldn't match his explosiveness, he's crossed their face the rest of the game. Iowa game, same thing, destroyed people. I still need to watch the Georgia tape. I know there were some concerns, but then I think there was also, I read some things that maybe that wasn't as concerning.
A lot of quick game. They're getting the ball out quick.
Like it's
scheming
hard
around him for sure.
He has that ability to win outside when he cuts out that false step. I don't think he's super bendy, but he's good enough with his hands and explosive enough off the ball. His first step, I've seen some people say I don't think his first step is good. I think you need to watch it really closely because at the end of the year, if you're pausing looking who gets off the ball first, he's out of his stance all the time.
Oh,
at the end of the year.
Because he is explosive, right? Everyone talks about him as this athlete. He is this athlete, and maybe this false step.
Well.
He's going to test well here.
Now
in
Thibodeau is unbelievable as a mover, unbelievable mover. I mean, like Myles Garrett level mover, but he doesn't have the size or the power yet that Garrett has to be able to get under guys, move them, and do those kinds of things. Garrett didn't really have it all figured out coming out, but like he kind of fell into some power reps anyway. Thibodeau just dies when he bull rushes right now. But he's so explosive. If he can even just stab and cross faces and dance a little bit, it would be stunning to me if he doesn't work out as a player, and I don't see any effort concerns on his tape at all. I've watched several games now. I have no idea where that's coming from. As a run defender, he can get stronger. He can do some things like that. But we talk about Hutchinson needing to cut out the false step. Thibodeau has a little bit of false step, and it doesn't even matter. First guy off the ball, unreal explosiveness. He's ready to go from that.
That's the thing. I'm the draft guy. I got to put a comp for every guy, and I'm just like, dude, it's like he moves like Myles Garrett. I don't want to put Myles Garrett because that's fucking that's a high praise for a guy, but like not a lot of guys have that level of movement skills at 260 pounds. It's just like a rare breed. So those two are pretty clearly 1-2 for everyone. Whatever order is not really here nor there, but edge 3 is up for debate. Like edge 3 in this class has been all over the map. You'll get a bunch of different names depending on who you talk to. Who for you is your edge 3 at the moment?
Yeah, this one's tricky for me, and I don't know that I even have it fully settled. So whatever I tell you here, you can't hold me too long.
I'm holding it too.
I mean, it'll change it at the combine anyway.
Yeah, it's going to change.
So
you know me, I value the traits of the combine a lot. I do have Carloftus in that kind of range right now. He and Ajabo are so different to me, and I've watched both of them pretty closely, and I have some other guys to watch too, but Like, Ajabo to me is, I think people have described him as like this guy who could be a total freak, and maybe he is at the combine. That's certainly possible. But to me, like, the one thing with Ajabo, like, when he is able to get off the ball first, he's very hard to block. But he's not very bendy, so like he has to get off the ball first because he can't really corner that much. And his hands are better than advertised. He was kind of billed to me as a very, very raw player. And in some ways that might be true, but he is very physical. And sometimes raw players are more finesse. They're just relying on athleticism. I think Ajabo is very physical. There's some things he needs to figure out about how to use that physicality a little bit better. But I find him to be a very physical player. He gets into guys' pads. He will try and, he'll try and snatch that outside arm and pull it toward him and get underneath and flip his hip. So I think he does have upside, maybe not like this elite bendy player, but there is a kind of I've seen some people say Chandler Jones. I vibe with that. He's somewhere on the Yannick Ngakoue to Chandler Jones scale, to where he's more of I described Yannick Ngakoue often as like a tilter. He's like tilts the edge. He doesn't really bend it. He kind of like runs on the side of his feet kind of to finish, and that's kind of Ajabo. So there's still a high ceiling for him, I think, but he's got to get better as a 3-down player for sure, and that's a big part.
People comp him to Jason Owe for like a lot of reasons. They're both like somewhat new to the game. I think they went to the same high school, right? Him and Owe. And to me, Owe was far more finesse, like he's far further along in my opinion than Owe was coming out. Not that kind of project, even though Owe was like freak of nature. But
I would talk about his hands at all.
I would talk a little bit about Carloftus because he's kind of, the evaluation of him has really been all over the map. And I think this week's big for him in terms of his testing because like he was a Bruce Feldman's freaks list guy, and like sometimes you see it, but sometimes I feel like he played so many snaps that he was a little hot and cold in terms of like his get off the ball. What are your thoughts on him and like his best fit in terms of when he plays the next level?
Very tricky prospect to figure out. Not quite what I was expecting. I've gone through a couple of these guys, right? Listed at 275 pounds. Okay, you're thinking Zach Allen, you're thinking like AJ Epinesa, two players I was way lower on the consensus. They were getting mocked in the first round. I put them with third-round grades, late third-round grades, early fourth-round grades, like as they went through the process. I was not big fans of either of those guys. We'll see how it goes for Epinesa, but like a lot of those bigger edge types in college have not really worked out in the NFL. And so it was a big concern to me going in, just knowing the profile. Watched him, and I was like, man, like there's a couple games in there, like I think Oregon State was one of them. I forget the other one. I mean, he really wasn't blocked like at all. Like whether it was power, the Iowa was the other one. I mean, the Iowa tackles needed some help. Like those guys, those boys were struggling this year, but he was getting under those guys' pads, throwing them around. Like I was like, all right. Like then the Ohio State game, which Hutchinson destroyed Ohio State. So it was a good game to be able to watch and compare. There's some prospects out there for Ohio State on their O-line. I don't know how good they are, but there's some prospects out there. I thought he really struggled in that game, and they left him unblocked a lot and optioned him off in the run game, and he couldn't move laterally. It's a big concern for the NFL if anybody's going to have him play in space. Now, can he be like a Sam Hubbard type that plays like outside and inside and does some versatile stuff for you that way and serves as like this
wins in a straight line too,
wins in a straight line. Yeah, like there's ways you can use him. The other thing about Carloftus, if you look at his stance, he stands like open and staggered to line of scrimmage and very open with his stance. It gives him a natural angle to the pocket. So I don't think his tape, even when he corners, is a great measurement of his actual bend and flexibility. I think it's just his stance pre-snap is very like open to the pocket, so he can kind of create a natural angle for himself to the quarterback. What happens though is it exposes him in the run game. And the NFL probably won't let him do it because he's going to be open like that, and they're going to kick him out, leave him unblocked, and have a hard time getting down and closing that space when he's unblocked. So there's ways around it. Ohio State figured that out. He got really wrecked in that game as a result. I think that could be a concern for the NFL.
I think the bend drills, the short shuttle, the 3-cone will not show up for him. I think he's going to show up in the explosives. He's going to have the broad, the vert, the 40. But when he does do the 3-cone, the comp I have for him was Justin Tuck, a guy that can like legitimately fire up the field, win as an explosive player. But the bend wasn't there. The guy's not turning the corner at any point.
I like that. That's
John, this has been fantastic. You're the man. I really appreciate you jumping on the show. Plug Pewter Report, the director of content here. We got to hear what you got.
We do have lots of great draft content coming out, and we have a lot of it on our show as well. Pewter Report podcast. 4 days a week we go live. It's awesome time. We talk a lot about the prospects for sure. We do talk a lot about it as it relates to the Bucs. I don't know if you guys have heard, but Tom Brady retired, or did he? Or did he? Or did he?
I don't know.
I don't know. But anyway, so that's a big topic of conversation. I don't think the Bucs will draft a quarterback, but we talk a lot of draft prospects over there on the show and at pewterreport.com in terms of content too. And of course on Twitter at Ledyard NFL Draft. I'm always talking about the draft.
Oh yeah, man. Thanks, dude. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Now joining the show, Tailgate here, Dane Brugler, senior draft analyst at The Athletic. I think we've had you on the show, obviously before, but we've never had you in person.
Yeah, this is
great to have you on the show, man. Great to have you in Indy. How's Indy been so far?
It's been great. I mean, after last year, it's just great to be here.
Yeah.
And we talk about it all the time, how all the data and stuff is great, but you seem to learn more at night.
Oh, for sure.
between sessions and things. So it's good to have that human interaction again.
I mean, so much of this class you pick up on, people are like, oh man, this is such a big mover after the combine. It's talking to teams here, it's talking to agents here. You find a lot about some of the intricacies of the class, or answer a lot of questions about the class. Why did Treylon Burks play so many of his reps in the slot this past year? You're talking to different people and like why he's being positioned that way. It does help you answer a lot of those details. We just had Jon Ledyard on from the Pewter Report. We talked a lot about the edge class, talked a little bit about Kenny Pickett. Let's go beyond Kenny Pickett. Obviously had 8.5-inch hands today. That's the talk of the town. But the other quarterbacks in this class, who right now is your quarterback one? Is it Pickett? And then, just speak to how everyone's viewing this quarterback class, right? Is it's not that good. There's not a lot of first-round talent. When are you taking that first quarterback off the board in this class?
Pickett is my top quarterback. I think we have the best feel for what he's going to be as a pro. In my opinion, if you're going to draft a quarterback in the first round, that means that you are convinced that he will be a top 15 quarterback, top 12 to 15 quarterback in the NFL at some point during his rookie deal. Even if that's not till year 3 or 4, whatever. But I just find it very hard to have any conviction on any of these guys that they will reach top 12, top 15 status in the NFL at some point in their rookie contract.
Yeah.
I find it very hard to have conviction in that. Now, will there be teams that, especially once coaches get involved, the interviews happen here, and then 30 visits and everything throughout the process. Once that happens, I'm sure teams will start to like these guys more and more, especially when they strike out on Russell Wilson doesn't go anywhere, and all the free agent quarterbacks and all that. Some of these quarterbacks will start to look a little better, and I think we have to look at each team and how they're set up differently. For one team, if Kenny Pickett gives you the chance to win 8, 9, 10 games a year, for one team, that sounds great. For another team, that's just not going to do it. That's not enough. So at least for their appetite in the first round. So in my opinion, Pickett's a top guy. I'm Malik Willis. I think it's absolutely fair to say he has the highest upside of this group with his traits. I don't think we talk enough about the jump he has to make from what he was asked to do at Liberty to what he will be asked to do in the NFL. So if you're drafting him top 10, top 12, you want him to see the field early. So it's a big jump for him, and it's not that he can't do it, it's just we haven't seen him do it. So it's a pure projection, and you have to be pretty convinced with his skill set if you're going to take him that early.
So you're going to hear rises and fallers throughout the week. How much stock do you put into the combine actually, and the testing you're going to see here, and what positions do you think it's most important for?
I think over the years, I think my answer to that's really it's evolved. Every year I think there's something new. I'm really interested in Treylon Burks, his 40, not necessarily the start, but the flying 20. The 20 to 40, that finish. I want to see, because that it's a lot. Everyone starts the same way, and especially guys that don't have a track background. So for me, a guy like Treylon Burks, that's really important. That 20 to 40, I think that's where he could really shine. I just want it to be a confirmation factor for me. If it's something that is different than what I saw on tape, then it's back to the tape to try and figure out why. Maybe the 4 games I watched, he was battling a hamstring, and just things like that. So I think the combine for me, the on-field drills and the agility drills, it's a cross-checking exercise. We'll compare it to the SATs. We always had to take the SATs in high school because not every curriculum, high school, is the same in terms of what they taught. SAT was a way to kind of get everybody on the level playing field. That's kind of what this is. It gets everyone on a level playing field, and it's valuable data to have as context for every player. It's
very similar to the Senior Bowl, right? They talk a lot about apples-to-apples comparisons at the Senior Bowl. You're getting people on this level playing field. You talked about the quarterback. It was interesting how you put it into perspective, how I look for a quarterback, I'm drafting him in the first round, a guy that I think can be this top 15, top 12 player at his position on his rookie deal. A name that comes to me there is Renner, right? I do feel that with Renner, there is this chance that he can be, even in year 2, year 3, a top 15, top 12 quarterback in the NFL. Your view on Renner as a prospect?
I do like him. I think that when you talk about a player with that experience, 43-6 or something like that, is in his career. Obviously coming from Cincinnati and AAC, and maybe not playing top tier talent week in, week out, but you can throw on his tape and you see concepts that will translate and what he's asked to do and some of the throws that he's making. Now, is he a little too scattershot than what you would normally target as a first round pick? Yeah, he is. And you wish he were a little bit bigger. I don't know how much bigger he's going to get. I know he wasn't too happy. They measured him when they did at the Senior Bowl. He didn't have a chance to eat breakfast or anything, so he was 207 and not 209 or whatever after he had some breakfast and sausage and eggs or something. But it's
6 gallons of milk.
Yeah, right, exactly. He's just not the biggest guy, and that's something that I don't think is ever going to change. It's just his body type, and that's something that wasn't really a factor in college, but he's going to work out well here. His numbers will be, you can compare him to wide receiver numbers, I think, with how he's going to test here. But it's not necessarily his game either. So I don't know that we should get too excited when he puts up these numbers here at the Combine.
So you're very connected in terms of like getting background information on these guys. You know a lot of the stuff. Call your shot on some guys here who are going to blow it up. Obviously, like Kyle Hamilton's going to blow it up. Not the top guys, but like some people that aren't getting talked about who are going to come here and put on a show.
Baylor brought a track team here, and I think that goes back to Coach Rule and what he recruited there. With JT Woods at safety, I mean, he's going to fly. The Thornton, the wide receiver, I'm more worried about his knees and how those are going to check out medically, but his 40 should be outstanding. The Barnes, the corner, he's got to be the favorite for the fastest 40 this week. I mean, he ran a 10:04 in 100 meters in high school, which I mean, it was a little wind dated. That's why it wasn't like a national record, but I don't care, wind or not. If you're running 10:04, that's Olympic trials.
It could be a hurricane, and I'd be
blowing up the thing.
Right, exactly. Put a jetpack on me, and I'm not doing that.
Yeah.
So, the Baylor Bride track team here, that's going to do really well. I want interested in the Washington corners. Both those guys are going to test really well. Kyler Gordon's a guy that's really grown on me. Because, I mean, listen, you guys know corner is a stopwatch position. And, I think when you look at Kyler Gordon, cover awareness, technique, not necessarily strengths to his game. But when you can move like he can and, he's going to blow it up with the short area stuff, the long speed, the jumps, everything, the way he can move, that absolves a lot of sins at corner. So, and then Trent McDuffie. And I did a piece today on The Athletic after talking to Trent, and he is one of, if not the smartest defensive back I've talked to as a prospect. Just throwing different situations at him and how he understands based on the formation. Okay, I'm changing to cover 6 or I'm going press bail where the other side's going to go quarters, and just every situation he understands what to look for. He's got a process, very process oriented, and how he attacks the corner position. Plus, even though he's not the biggest guy, he'll run 4.3, low 4.4s here, jump 42. So both these Washington corners, at the end of the day, after this week. Trent's already there. He should be a top 10 pick. But Gordon, I think we'll be looking at him as more of a first-round lock after this week.
Wow. So let's talk about the cornerback class. And you are a high on Trent McDuffie. Cornerback 1 for you. I love Trent McDuffie. He's a top 10 player on PFF's draft board. Break down those top 3 guys. So it's seemingly Gardner, Stingley, McDuffie. A lot of people have Gardner, CB1. Yeah. I have Stingley, CB1. You have McDuffie. Break down the strengths and weaknesses of those guys and like where you think they are in this class.
Yeah, there were with Sauce. Obviously his resume is just outstanding. Not giving up a touchdown, and there were a few times where down the field I think he gets a little out of control. Where it leads to penalties, or the Navy tape is coming to mind, where he was a little bit out of control down the field, and so that bothers me a little bit. I mean, he's still a top 15 player in this draft. There's no question about that. He should run well. And I was talking to someone that the guy that's training him right now, and he said that the cornerback room was not very lively, whatever, and then Sauce showed up a few weeks late because Cincinnati went deep into the playing the college football playoff. As soon as Sauce showed up, the room just exploded. Like, he brings the energy everywhere he goes, and so that was interesting to hear, and not really a surprise, when you know about Gardner. So I like him a lot. Stingley is such an enigma. If you flip those 2019 and 2021 seasons, we're talking about him as he's picking out in a house in Jacksonville, going number 1. It's so much ability, and it's just what's going on with him medically. Biggest thing from talking to scouts about Stingley is they don't make no bones about it. He's not an alpha, and that's okay. You don't have to be. Would you like your corner 1 to be an alpha? Sure, but I don't think it's necessarily a requirement. More importantly, do you have the competitive toughness required to do it? And so that'll be the big question for Stingley this week, is just proving yourself in these interviews by selling yourself and why you should be still one of the top corners in this draft. And then mention McDuffie. I just maybe just recently talking to him's factoring in a little too much, but I was just so impressed with him as a person. I wish I was that mature at 20, 21 years old. So he's a smart guy.
I wish I was that mature at 31 years old. Come on.
We had him on this podcast, and I came away with something very similar, right? This guy, one of the smart. I compared him mentally and from a maturation standpoint to Byron Murphy, who's another Washington quarterback.
Yeah.
When he was talking to people pre-draft, it's like, oh my gosh, this guy gets it. And I think how you said it, process-oriented cornerback. That's exactly what McDuffie do. And then when you factor in, he's also this freaky athlete. It's all going to the sum of the parts ends up being a top 10 type of player. I want to talk also about the offensive tackle class. You were the first guy to put Ike Ekwonu, the NC State offensive tackle, number 1 overall, to the Jacksonville Jaguars. Shook some people up, right?
Yeah,
Everyone's been locking into Aiden Hutchinson, Kayvon Thibodeau, or Evan Neal, and then you kind of shake this up. And now draft odds, betting odds have moved. You're moving markets and all that. And you're seeing Mel Kiper now of ESPN put Ike Ekwonu number 1. And he's another player that we've had on this show. Super great demeanor about him. Super smart player. Guy that I think will be coveted in this interview process. He's also going to test really well here in Indy. Talk about him specifically, and then also compare him to the other top dogs in this class.
Yeah, and I think obviously Jacksonville, I'm not sure they know who they want, so obviously we don't know. But Ike belongs in the conversation. He is one of the best players in this draft, and in my opinion, I've got Hutchinson, Ekwonu. Those are my 1-2 players in this draft. And with Ike, I think he's the best run blocker in this class. And then the steps he made, the improvements he made this year in pass protection. Does he still overset quite a bit? Yeah, he does. He's a habitual oversetter. But I think he made the key improvements this year that you wanted to see. That tells you he's getting better and better and better at this. So if you want to go the conservative route, you're taking Evan Neal. I think that's fair to say. If you're going to go with maybe a guy that has a higher ceiling, I think Ike's your guy. And the makeup of every team, every offensive line is different. So Jacksonville is interesting when you look at with Coach Peterson there. He's going to want to get better on that offensive line. He's going to want to, establish his offense and get better on that offensive line. And I think if it's not Evan Neal or Ekwonu at 1, I'll be pretty surprised.
Where do these tackles fall in terms of historically? So 2 years ago it was elite tackle class. Right. Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, Jedrick Wills, those guys. Where would Ike Ekwonu be on a board compared to those guys for you?
That's a great question. Because I'm used to people asking about last year, and I had Sewell and Slater above anybody in this class. Yeah. But you factor in that class, and I think he would probably be, because in that class for me, it was Jedrick Wills, Wirfs was 2, and then Becton, and then Thomas. That was my top 4 that year. I think that Ekwonu and Neal would probably be 4 and 5, pushing Thomas to 6. That's probably what mine would have been at that point. We're talking really good tackle prospects. Yeah. And it gets even tougher if you include the 2 guys last year with Sewell and Slater. This is exactly what the NFL needs, is these tackles. So it's a couple teams at the top of the draft. Probably Jaguars at 1, Jets at 4 maybe. I think that's maybe where we sit right now with what we know. I think that may be a safe projection of where we could see those 2 guys going.
Something I've seen recently is more conversation around Trevor Penning, the Northern Iowa offensive tackle, being ahead of Charles Cross in people's rankings, where I think 2-3 weeks ago we were talking about the big 3, Evan Neal, Ike Ekwonu, and Charles Cross as these top 10, top 12 type of players. What do you think the reasoning is for maybe some perception of a fall for Charles Cross? And then talk specifically about Penning and Cross together.
Yeah, with Cross, I think he's a very young player, redshirt sophomore who has played a lot of football, but just talking to him, he's just a young guy, and so I think that there is a little bit of a gap there that he has to make up. And coming from that air raid offense, Leach's scheme, talking with teams, the name Andre Dillard's come up. And whether that's warranted or not, it's at least out there because of the scheme that they came from, and I think Dillard has more. Does he love football type of questions with him. I think that's why hasn't lived up to being a first-round pick. But, there is a little bit of a transition there going from that air raid scheme to what he's going to be asked to do in the NFL. So, Cross, I was so impressed with his movement patterns, hand exchange. Do I wish he was a little more powerful? Yeah. But I think when you have the movements that he does and the ability to use his hands, that's a great starting point. Those are foundational traits that you're willing to bet around. And so, I'd be surprised if Cross made it all the way to the 20s. That'd be surprising. Could Penning go ahead of him? I think that's possible. We saw up close and personal at the Senior Bowl how talented he is for a guy that's 6'7", 330. There's not guys just walking through the door that have that athleticism, have that competitive toughness, and just I know maybe some of the defensive guys are getting a little annoyed by it, but he legitimately, goes by the no mercy rule when he's on the football field. It doesn't matter if it's practice or what. That's how he plays. That's how he's wired. It's not like a forced thing. That's just how he is. So, pending, there will be some that want to bet on those traits. That this 330, the power, the competitive toughness. If they want, it comes down to what you prefer in an offensive lineman, that or cross. So I think I wouldn't be surprised if either one went ahead of the other.
When you're betting on offensive tackles, right? And you bring up Dillard, maybe he doesn't love football and all that stuff, and like how much they love football and that mean streak on the field matters so much, right? And I think I harp on it all the time with Mike and talking to a lot of these guys, and it's like that is a legit difference maker for these decision makers, right? It's about how you're approaching the game, what you're trying to do, what your efforts are, and all that stuff. I don't
think fans realize how scouts. I was just reminded of this, but Scout told me how they eliminate more names via interviews than they do anything that happens on the field.
You hear about a lot of what you said, right? Derek Stingley, 1, 2, 3, 4. He's not an alpha. That's a reason people are dropping him down.
Yeah.
You talk about Charles Cross. He's a younger player, needs to step there. That matters so much in this process too. And I think when you do see a lot of the draft coverage coming out of the combine, people think it's all stemming from the testing, the measurables, the arm length, all that stuff. A lot of this is how many shots did you make with Nick Sirianni and how'd you react, right? A lot of this is that layer of what human being you are. And it always comes back to me. You are making in this draft with every pick, even the ones in the later rounds, multi-million-dollar decisions.
Yeah.
If you're not factoring in what this guy does on a mini hoop, you're missing out. Right? This is the piece of it that you need to factor in. That's why we make fun of how much we care about the hand size, how much we care about his 10-yard split versus flying 20, his reaction to rock paper scissors. When you're making decisions like this and you have one shot, this is such a big part of it.
All right. Finish up with this. Everyone has their quote-unquote guys that they are sticking their neck out higher on than most. For me, in this class, it's Bernard Ryman, the Central Michigan tackle, Skye Moore, Western Michigan, Leo Chanel, the Wisconsin linebacker. I'm pretty high on those guys. Who are those guys for you this year that you're people aren't high enough on these guys?
I'm with you on Skye Moore. I think he's a top 10 receiver in this class. He's for a guy that was a corner and quarterback in high school, to see his development. And I was told he's testing about low 4.4s in the 40, so don't be surprised if that starts to pick up after this combine. I'd throw in Logan Hall. I really like. I think because he's still young. He's 21 years old. I think he's a guy that should have redshirted. He didn't play a ton in high school. He should have redshirted, but they needed him on the field. I like him better as an end, where just give him a little bit of a runway, let him use that length, let him use that quickness. So I think Logan Hall is one of those guys that I'm a little higher on. If I'm picking in I pick 40 and he's still on the board for me, I feel like I'm getting a huge steal.
Speaking of a guy that has a presence about him too, talking to Logan Hall, that guy commands a room, and he understands, he's hyper aware, I feel, of the criticisms people give him, and I think that when you do have that level of awareness on where you need to improve, again, it's just how you're approaching that. I think Logan Hall's another one of those guys where you highlight X, Y, and Z, where we need to get better, he's going to do it, whether that's adding weight, dropping weight, all that stuff. This has been fantastic, Dane. It's great to meet you in person. It's great to have you on the show in person. We'll have to get you back on again. Before we let you go, plug where everyone can find you and what you're writing for The Athletic.
Yeah, just make sure you have your Athletic subscription. Draft guide will come out here in about a month, and as long as you have your subscription, you get the guide included. So I promise you, there's you won't get it.
800 prospects this year, right?
Yeah, just under 1,000. So I've never had someone say, there just wasn't enough detail in that thing. So check it out.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, we appreciate it. Thanks again.
Thanks, guys.
Now joining Tailgate, ESPN's Jordan Reid. We haven't had you on since you got to the big dogs here. It's great that you're blessing us with your presence here, Jordan. How you been?
Yeah, I'm excited, man. Excited to be at ESPN. It's been a bit of an adjustment for me, but I work with great people, so everything's been great.
We've talked a lot about with Dane Brugler. We had him on earlier. We had Jon Ledyard on. We're talking quarterbacks, receivers. He's talked a lot about the edge and the corner. Where I want to start, honestly, is this linebacker group here. Obviously, you have Jacoby Dean of Georgia, Devin Lloyd of Utah are two guys that are high on everyone's board. People feel are top 15, top 20 type of players. But there's even some depth to this class, too. Before we get to the depth, compare those two players. Compare Dean to Lloyd and what people are going to really see here in Indy between those two.
Well, the first thing is there's vastly different body types.
Yeah.
Kobe Dean at 5'11", about 230 pounds, and then Devin Lloyd at about 6'3", 240 pounds nearly. So different types of body types, and I think their games are a little bit different too. I think Kobe Dean is more of your run around and just chase the ball. He's just a ball chaser. It's like he has a GPS and wherever the ball is going, he's really good. He makes plays behind the line of scrimmage too, which I think is an underrated factor about him. But whenever those smaller linebackers, the things you always worry about is just when blockers are able to get inside of their frames, can they just get around that and avoid and negate some of those things? But with Devin Lloyd, he played a little bit of defensive end. He's a converted safety, so a little bit better in coverage too than Kobe Dean right now. But the thing with Lloyd is that he's just so gifted as an edge rusher too. I think that's something that's really underrated about his game overall. But both of those guys make plays behind the line of scrimmage, which is going to help him on the next level.
I always like fitting or comparing classes at certain positions. And to me, this one kind of reminds me of where this is like top 2 group where the Devin White class, where it's like I see 2 guys probably going high. Where would you stack these 2 compared to those 2 in terms of like ordering them?
I like those guys a little bit better.
Okay.
I think Dean is very physical, but Devin White was just a different type of physical, and the size was a little bit better too. And their weight might come in at the same, but Devin White is a little bit thicker than both of these guys too. So I think Devin White was a little bit better of a superior prospect than these players.
Okay. So much with these off-ball linebackers too, and even beyond just Dean and Lloyd, is like the type of defense you run, what you ask your linebackers to do. And I think that's the same story with every position. Something I've been talking a lot about in Indianapolis, and even in previous episodes. It's like it's not as simple if you're a Raiders fan, right? And you need a linebacker that you just take the next best one who's available. It's what you're asking them to do within that defense. They obviously brought over Patrick Graham, so you're changing things up, right? And I think it's not as simple as like if you don't get Dean, get Lloyd, and if you don't get Lloyd, get Dean, or whatever it may be. So I do think that factoring in what can they do and what are you going to ask them to do in the NFL is so much more important than saying like we need linebacker, let's go get one.
Yeah.
Getting to the depth of this class on day 2, some people really like Chad Muma. Deontay Lee, an analyst here at PFF, thinks he could be the top linebacker in this class coming out of Wyoming. Darian Beavers is a guy with really good size for the position. Who are some of those day 2 types that you do think can come in and be starters in the NFL?
Yeah, well, one I think is going to go much higher than a lot of people are saying right now is Damone Clark from LSU. He's one player that just from a physical standpoint that I was blown away by at the Senior Bowl. I mean, you go up and stand beside him. He's every bit of 6'3", nearly 250 pounds. So teams that are in need of linebackers like the Patriots, I think they're going to be all over him just because they like those bigger stature type of linebackers, those big pluggers. Like they have Dante Hightower in the middle. They want players of that stature really in the middle. And then there's plenty of other players too. You mentioned Beavers and Chad Moon, and there's others too that I like too. So I really like the depth of this linebacker class overall.
The other class or the other position group I wanted to talk a lot about is the safety class. No one's talking about it because Kyle Hamilton's good, right? Everyone's like, okay, Kyle Hamilton's the top safety in this class, probably the only safety who goes in the first round, even though you could see some others sneak in depending on how Brisker runs, Lewis Cena, Georgia. After Kyle Hamilton, who are the names coming up? Jalen Petrie at Baylor, right, if you consider him a safety. After that, after Kyle Hamilton, who are these like day 2 or maybe back end of round 1 guys that people should be talking more about?
Yeah, so there's 2 guys I like a lot, and I think they're going to be really good testers. The first one is Jaquan Brisker from Penn State. Everywhere he's been, he has success as far as he can play on the roof. He can come down and be a really good box or run supporter, too. So, like his ball skills, too. I think it was the Wisconsin game where he closed out the game with the interception. So, his range is really good. And the next one is Daxton Hill from Michigan. I think he's one player of – I think his eval is really tricky just because they played him in the slot predominantly. But I think there's more meat on that bone as far as what he can do. It was just a matter of that was the role that he was asked to satisfy at Michigan. So I'm interested to see what they do with him. There was one game Michigan State was a little bit rough. They played him a little bit different in that game. So I'm going to be interested to see where he does go. But right now I think he probably could end up going top 50 just because I think he's probably going to run 4.3. He's probably going to jump 40-plus in the vertical too. So, and I like this safety class a lot. Lewis Cena from Georgia is another one that I like too. So overall I think the safety class is very talented.
We had Brisker on. One more thing on Brisker. We had Brisker on right after that Wisconsin interception. And hearing him, like he is such a winner, dude. And I talked to a lot of guys. I talked to Jahan Dotson out of Penn State, some of the other guys, and I'm like, talk about Arnold Ebiketie too. Talk about Brisker and playing with him. It's like he wins. All he wants to do is win. When he goes on the field every single time he wins. And I think having that presence at safety with the ball skills he has, with the explosives we're going to see this week, I do think more people, again, will be talking about Brisker in a safety class that's been so under-discussed so far. What were you going to say, Mike?
Let's discuss Kyle Hamilton because he is a dude. How good is Kyle Hamilton in sort of the history of your scouting safeties? Is he the best safety prospect you've ever seen?
Best player in the class.
Yeah.
I've been adamant about it on social media. I think he's the best player in this class, and I think people get so hung up in just the positional value of how you have to have a defensive end, a quarterback, or offensive tackle at the top. If we're just stacking the talent and how they translate to the next level, and if we're talking about all-pro or Pro Bowl types of players, I think Kyle Hamilton is like a Derwin James type of player. And I know Derwin hasn't been able to stay healthy, but just talking about if he was able to stay healthy, you're taking a Derwin James in the top 10 without question. Now we're talking about a player that's an inch or two taller, not as thick as Derwin, but I think he's more rangy overall in the back end of the defense. We saw the Florida State game. We saw the interception that he had on that one. So like
everyone saw that. And that was one of the most clipped moments of the season.
Right. So I think he's the best player in the class. I like Kyle Hamilton a lot.
Hamilton, too, when we were talking to Brian Kelly in the season, it's like, I've never coached a more versatile player. And people bring up Derwin James. When you have the size to do it, right? He is like 6'3", 6'4", 220. And he's going to test well. And that, at the safety position, is so rare. Like, have we seen a safety like Kyle Hamilton in the last 5-10 years? Like, Derwin James is the comparison we make, but some people are talking about playing him at corner. I do think there hasn't been this consensus view of a top-end player, a top-end safety in a very long time.
Yeah. How high? So Kyle Hamilton, best player. Would you, the Jaguars? What would you do with the #1 overall pick? Would you draft Kyle Hamilton?
Well, I mean, that's the tough part about the media, just because we're not scouting for a team and we're not building our board for a team. So obviously you have to figure out a way to protect Trevor Lawrence with that #1 overall pick. So that's why I think it's between Ike Ekwonu or Evan Neal at the top. But if I'm the Jets at 4, I would take Kyle Hamilton without question. And I know that may come with a lot of backlash, but I mean, Jets fans bring up Calvin Pryor and Jamal Adams, but those guys were so different just because they're
was Jamal
big
Adams a bad
linebackers.
pick? Like,
Yeah.
Jamal Adams,
Also, Calvin Pryor is not even close to what Kyle Hamilton. I mean, are we serious right now?
Right. So he's so different, and Jamal is more so that hybrid linebacker type of where you just want to move him forward. I think Kyle Hamilton can satisfy so many roles on all 3 levels of the defense.
I do think that's a commonality, though, in team feedback on mock drafts, is that if they've drafted similar positions in the past and they haven't panned out, they kind of do bucket them or paint them all the same way. One more position group, and then we'll let you go. I know you got another hit here. Defensive tackle.
Yeah.
So long, Jordan Davis was kind of this consensus DT1. Some people talk about him like a top 10, top 5 type of player at some points in the season. Now, more conversation around this other guy that plays for Georgia, Devonta Wyatt. He's PFF's DT1 right now. He's my top guy as well. A guy that just legitimately looked different at the Senior Bowl from an explosiveness standpoint, how athletic he is. The 2 Georgia boys, you taking them both in the first round, and then how do you stack this defensive tackle class?
Yeah, so I'll just start with Devonta Wyatt first, a player that's extremely explosive. I think he's going to open up even more eyes during the testing portion. I think he's going to have some freaky type of numbers. Is a bit of an older prospect, will be a 24-year-old rookie. So he won't be on some teams' boards just because they have age thresholds, but if you're looking for a true penetrating up the field 3 technique, I mean, he's by far the best one in this class to me. But Jordan Davis, he's one of the more polarizing prospects in a sense, and I think so many people are getting caught up in the 2-down value thing with him. They're kind of taking away that they had Jalen Carter, a player that we've been talking about a lot this time next year, and then also Devonta Wyatt on the interior. So if I'm a coach, I'm going to play my 2 best pass rushers. I'm not going to leave him on the field in a sense. So I think he's kind of being a little bit underrated in a sense. I mean, I would be fine with taking Jordan Davis in the first round if you're a team that needs that big run stuffer in the middle. So with those 2 guys, I think they can be really special. But this defensive tackle class got really good in a hurry. It was labeled as a weakness about a couple months ago, but Travis Jones goes and shows out at the Senior Bowl. Perrion Winfrey goes out and plays well at the Senior Bowl too. So I think the meat of this class really is on day 2. I think we're going to see those guys fly off the board.
With defensive tackle too, I'll close with this comment. I do think that Jordan Davis, this is again where you get the questions answered, right? Why is he not playing on the field? You talk to Georgia coaches, you talk to Davis, and if you feel like you have those concerns, I think that again is what's going to come out here in Indy. Jordan, this has been fantastic. Really appreciate the time. We'll go ahead and plug what you're working on ESPN.
Yeah, so we have a bunch of mock drafts, a bunch of recaps coming out, of course. Me and Matt Miller are going to be recapping everything from each day, so be on the lookout for that. You can find me on Twitter at Jordan_Reid, that's REID, and then you can find all of our work, me, Matt, Todd, and Mel on ESPN.com.
Thanks, man.
Yep.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tailgate. Make sure you rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Also, check us out on YouTube if you want to watch along. We were going to try tonight, we're getting clips of the Matt LaFleur. You're going to go round 2 with Matt LaFleur. We got goals. I'm not buying a single Hot Pocket.
Smart.
We were talking to Matt LaFleur again. We're going to redeem ourselves.
Yeah.
And we are getting in bed before 5.
Nope. That one I don't have to commit. That one I'm not committing to.
All right. There you have it. Asa Gayle, Mike Renner, Tailgate.